Thank you so much for joining us, Allan. We really appreciate it. So you in your campaign, you've talked a lot about schools and you've talked a lot about what you'd like to see. Can you share with this audience, and I want you to think aspirational, 10 years, 20 years out, and as a business person, what would be your vision for education, specifically the School District of Philadelphia? And tell me the top 3 things you would do to make that vision come true.
Thank you, everybody. My name's Allan Domb. I'm running for mayor. And look, I will say that it's evolving because as your next mayor, I recognize that the role of a leader is to listen to smarter people who really know what the issues are and be open to them. So for example, a year ago, I wouldn't have had the same answer I'm giving you today because I've learned. And so my vision would be 10, 20 years from now, how do we create the schools that will give every child a great opportunity for a quality education in a quality building, but also opportunity for a great job. Not a low-paying job, but a great job. I don't know if you know this, but in the last 09 to 18, all the jobs we created in the United States that paid less than $35,000, the percentage was 29%. In Philadelphia, the percentage was 60.5. We have to break that because those are poverty jobs. And so my goal would be, how do we create more entrepreneurs in the city? How do we create schools that are pathways to good paying jobs? And how do we envision schools? And I'm very impressed with some of the schools I visited. And I will tell you that I was up at a school Friday morning, as a Mass Charter 3, I think, up on Roosevelt Boulevard. And they took over an old Crown Cork and Seal headquarters and created a school. I was blown away by how I was impressed with what they're doing. But I think we need to bring some of those models into our schools and say, the schools we have today are functionally obsolete. They don't work anymore. We need to think out of the box, come up with new ideas. We have plenty of real estate that's probably not going to be utilized due to the pandemic and other situations. And how do we recreate opportunities for good schools that'll help our young people get good paying jobs?
And how do you envision, so that's a really big and bold aspiration. How do you envision beginning that process, right? You've seen a lot of buildings, a lot of schools across the city. How do you envision that transformation process, and then how do you pay for it?
First of all, I haven't taken a salary, so I've donated my salary to schools. So I've had the opportunity to visit schools, including your school, which I'm impressed with, especially that backyard you have there and what you're doing there. And so it's given me a great opportunity to go to all these different schools. So first of all, I don't think the cost is that expensive. We have several schools that we may want to look at. When I was on council, I remember getting a report from Uri Munson. I don't remember the exact numbers, but 40 or 45 schools that were operating at a very low capacity. Let's look at the opportunity and how can we maybe take some of those schools in a neighborhood and combine them into a state-of-the-art school so we save on the overhead. But also I think that in today's market, here's the problem. Politicians don't think long-term. They think for the next election. I'm just being blunt about this, okay? Abraham Lincoln said there's 2 goals of a politician: get elected and get reelected, okay? Well, what you need is somebody who is willing to say, I don't care if I get reelected or not. I want to do what's right for the city of Philadelphia. So to answer your question, there's plenty of money to do that. When I was on council, I led the charge to collect the delinquent taxes for out-of-state landlords. We put in a program where our collection rate went in 15, it was 89%. In 2019, we wound up at 96%, collecting $120 million more per year. I also picked up the phone and called Rob DeBoe, our finance director, and said, Rob, we have commercial buildings not being assessed correctly. No one's fault. We don't have the expertise. Hire a commercial firm. He did it. We found another $120 million. So there's ways to find the money. That's every year, by the way. That's $240, $250 million more every year.
Excellent. And so just my last question for you would be, about 95% of our parents said that they wanted a more modern learning experience for their kids. And so you've visited some of these schools with these innovative models. How do you see transferring or replicating those schools in high-need neighborhoods?
Well, it was an eye-opener for me when I went to this school on Friday morning that I saw buses there taking kids from almost every neighborhood into that school, which really speaks volumes to me because I think parents in general will allow their kids to go to a school that's safe, where they're not worried about their safety. and number two, where they're getting a great education, and then number three, where they have all these opportunities for growth. How do I envision it? I think we need to look at the older schools. Some of them should be shut down and closed, and we should look for new opportunities with new schools. I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly, but that's how I would envision it. And I will say this, I would engage people up here and people in the audience, because you have a lot more knowledge on this subject than I do. My job as the mayor is to bring together the best, the brightest, and the most diverse people to help us get the best results for the city.
Excellent, thank you.
So I think we just lost our Parkway students to pizza. I saw them all exit with 2 boxes. So, but I still see young people in the audience. I also see some colleagues that are principals. I also see Kathy Lloyd Murray, a teacher from Bethune. And so what do you say to our students and our teachers about their right to feel safe in the schools during the day and the navigation to the schools to and from?
It's terrible we have to think that way. Terrible. And I say that because remember the 14-year-old Nicholas Elizalde, a Roxborough High School student? So I actually met with Nicholas's mom and his grandmother on my own. She actually reached out to me because she saw my public safety plan on LinkedIn, and she responded to me, and I responded to her. And when you talk about heartbreak, you know, that was her only child. Mm-hmm. She was a teacher, actually. She's a teacher in our school system. Yes, yes, and that's a heartbreak to go through that. I mean, the tragedy. So, A, we have to make our schools safer. We need more, we need more people outside of schools from 3 to 6 when a lot of this violence occurs. We probably need more police at some of these SEPTA locations around the schools. We need cameras around the high schools. And we also need to do a much better job in monitoring social media. Social media is where a lot of these things are coming from. I don't think we're doing a really good job in that area, and we need to. And look, I know I heard earlier you talked about trauma. There's a lot of trauma in the schools. I met a 12-year-old girl at an event. She told me that her friend who was 12 years old was shot and killed. And I asked if she had any kind of counseling. She said no. And I've talked to past police commissioners. Again, I'm reaching out to people who are smarter than me, and they said we need a handle with care program that incorporates the school professionals, counselors, and the police to work in these situations collaboratively. So I would say we need to do a way better job than what we're doing, but schools are not in a silo. This is citywide. Look, we have about 1,800 people on our streets that are extremely violent. We need to take them off the street. We need to prosecute illegal gun violations. The guy who shot Nicholas had 18 prior gun violations. Like, why was he on the street? And we need to prosecute retail theft. So just a general accountability of crime.
Thank you. And I can say, as the principal of that school is a beloved sister and friend, she has not slept sound since that incident. So it really impacts whole school communities. My second question is, how do we then bring in, with such violence and issues that we're having, how do we recruit and retain a dedicated, diverse workforce, particularly Black male teachers, that will come into the system to help with students that look like them?
The information I have, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that in the public school system, we have about male Black teachers are about 5%. And I think in the charter, it's about 12% is what I've been told, which is a pretty low number on both areas. But I think we have some issues here, and not just with teachers. We have the same issues with government employees and contracts. And I'm going to go out of the box a little here. From 2020 to 2022, our economy saw massive inflation, 5, 10, 15%. Look, if you're trying to buy a house, interest rates doubled. Your cost of buying a home doubled in the last 15 months. But when you're working in government or teacher salaries or whatever, you have set contracts that have increases of 2, 3, maybe 3.5% if you're lucky, okay? We have not kept up. Look, we have 4,000 to 5,000 vacancies in city government. We have vacancies in the school teachers. We have vacancies for police. We need to revisit what we're paying because we're not competitive in an inflationary market. Now, if we were in a depression, government people want to come into the government because it's a solid job. But no one's really addressing the big issue, and that is we're in an inflationary market, and we haven't kept up with salaries. So to attract more people, we need to make the salaries more attractive. Maybe we need to give some benefits on their schooling as far as credits and so forth, but we need to make it attractive. You know, one of the thoughts I had, and it's come into play with community college, I saw there's some schools out west or companies out west that are actually financing college education. They're letting the kids go to school without paying for it, and once they start earning like over $75,000 a year, they're paying back a percentage of the excess above 75, 20, 25%. It's an interesting idea that we could explore for, community college.
Well, that's a great segue. You were like reading our minds up here. So you've talked about, and as you're talking about now, we know, and I was mentioning earlier, some statistics that show us that having an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree is associated with higher paying jobs and higher earnings over time. And so my question to you is how do we ensure that Philadelphia's colleges and universities are creating a viable pathway for our citizens, for our residents, to be able to get a college education without incurring a mountain of debt?
So this has been my belief system since I've been in council. I think in our schools from K through 12, this helps in your college years, we should start teaching financial literacy, start teaching technology, and start teaching entrepreneurship. I always say you make a living working, you create wealth owning. And in that financial literacy piece in high school, teach home ownership. 95% of the wealth in this country is in homes, people's homes. The average wealth of a tenant is $4,000 to $6,000. The average wealth of a homeowner is $200,000. We need to teach home ownership. But to answer your question so we'll have a better workforce, I also like the idea of letting kids go to school 4 days a week in high school, and on the 5th day working in a job, something that I kind of did when I went to public school. So let them work at a job like Cristo Rey, let them get paid, let them get credit, they'll get a summer job. Maybe even they'll be, in this market, they'll say, hey, Allan, you're working Monday. I need you Tuesday through Friday after school. There's a labor shortage, and I need you to come in on Saturday, too. The Drexel Co-op program started in 1919 because there was a labor shortage. So I think that will help. But let me mention something else about community college that I think we have to start focusing this way. We have a booming industry called life sciences in Philadelphia. And I called together about a year ago 13 or 14 life science companies, most of them specializing in gene and cell therapy. And yeah, they complained about our taxes, and they complained about our spaces. But the biggest complaint was a lack of talent. So I picked up the phone and called John Fry at Drexel and called Don Generals at Community College. And I said, here's my idea, and I'll help you with this. Let's create our own college, life sciences, with Community and Drexel as a co-partnership that specializes in life sciences. Right now, we need gene and cell therapy employees. These are great jobs, and when you look at life sciences, a lot of the people in our city aren't participating, the residents, but getting community involved, I think we could get residents involved. That's how we have to view, I think, our institutions and do more of that idea of intentional. I will say this, if we have a college of life sciences, we'd be the first in the country like that, gene and cell therapy, and you talk about attracting businesses here, every business will want to come here because we have the talent. At the end of the day, it's all about talent. People want to come to locations because of the talent.
Sure. And so I guess what about for those individual students, families that are aspiring to careers that do require a college degree? Specifically, I'm thinking teaching, nursing, doctors, these different degrees and diplomas and fields where we have shortages, especially shortages in diverse representation. So for those students, especially if they want to go to school, college to pursue that degree, you mentioned Drexel's a more expensive school. So how, as mayor, would you sort of help to ensure that those students that are aspiring to those kinds of fields specifically, how do we ensure that they are able to do so without, again, incurring too much debt?
So I don't have a solid answer to that, but I can tell you I did speak with former council member Maria Sanchez about her idea for community college. She wanted it to be free tuition. And she explained to me that the cost of community college, if I recollect, is about $60 million. And she said there could be federal and state money that support about 40 million of that number. And the city's cost could be around 15 to 20. Do I have the exact numbers? Maybe not, but I think the idea is worth exploring. But I also think that it shouldn't be just free to anyone. I think there should be an income level. I'm not sure what that right number is. I don't know if it's families that make less than $75,000 a year or $100,000 a year, but somebody who's making $200,000, they could surely pay for community college, okay? But the other thing we should do at community, and I don't know if you've done this, you should bring to community college Benefits Data Trust, Campaign for Working Families, and United Way, because we still leave on the table $100 million of federal earned income tax credit money for 35,000 families in our city. You could do this at your school, too. All these parents should get this money. I passed a wage tax bill. 60,000 families qualify, 200,000 people. After I did the research, sadly, we were taxing lower income people in our city at 18.1%. Every other city was 10 to 14, kind of embarrassing. So this refunds 60,000 families, 200,000 people, $800 to $1,000. Last year, 2,500 people applied. I mean, we need to do a better job in getting that money out.
For sure, and I'd be remiss not to say that we are doing that at the Community College of Philadelphia. It's certainly an important investment of our time and energy when it comes to supporting our students. So it looks like that's time, and I'll pass it back to Stacy.
So, Allan, if you'd like to spend 30 seconds sharing anything with your platform that you would like the audience to know.
I would say that, look, our city has right now a crisis in public safety, affordable housing, good-paying jobs, and poverty, and others. But the biggest crisis is leadership. Joe Neubauer taught me that leadership is the key to everything, strong leadership. And that's what's needed as the mayor of this city. This is an opportunity. This is a turning point election similar to 1991. We're at a turning point. We need strong leadership. I believe I can provide that leadership, and I thank you for this opportunity. And I will say that God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I will use them in that proportion. Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking Allan Domb.